So in this fourth part of our Vue Datatable series, we'll be implementing features like selecting multiple columns. So I can select these records, and then with these I can perform operations like delete and export. So in this part, we'll be implementing selecting multiple records and deleting those multiple records. In the another part, we'll be discussing about exporting these. So let's start by deleting single records from the database. So for that, let's open up our Visual Studio Code, and we have a delete button here for every single record. So we have a button, and on click, what I want to do here is delete. Let's define a function called delete single record, and let's pass in the student ID, and let's go ahead and define that function. So we have selected section. I think these are watchers. So on the methods, let's define that here, delete single record. So this will receive the student ID, and here we also need to define API route. So let's go ahead in our api.php, and this will be of type delete, and we'll be using route model binding. So route delete student/student, and here I want to go to student controller class, and the function that I want to call is destroy, since we are deleting a single record. And let's also define another prefix called delete, so you can actually do whatever you like, whatever you are comfortable with. So now let's go to the student controller and define a function called destroy. So here we'll be getting that student, and what I want to do here is let's return the student ID in order to check whether, okay, let's just send the ID in order to check whether our code is working or not. So now in our API, in our students index.view, what we can do is we can make an API request to axios.delete, and our route will be /API/student/delete/ and the ID of the student. So this will be student ID. And then what we can do is, so since we'll be getting the response here, what I want to do is let's just console.log this value, console.log response.data. Save that, and we have the npm run watch running. And now if I go ahead and reload our browser, enter Ctrl+Shift+I to open up our inspector, inspect, we open up our inspector, website inspector. And now let's open up the console. So we have some property error, converted property function of undefined. Okay, that's a bootstrap error, so let that be. And now if I go ahead and click on delete, then I'm getting the ID of 1. If I go ahead and click on delete for another button, then I'm getting the ID of 2. So our code is working fine. And the only thing that we need to do here in our API, in our student controller.php, is we can actually delete the student. So student delete, and here what I want to do is I'm going to return a response with no content. This will send the status as 200 and the body will be empty. So here what we want to do is when we execute that function, when we get the response, then I want to fetch the students again in order to refresh our table. So save that, And now if we go ahead and reload our browser, and if I click on delete for the first record, then this should be deleted from the database and the data table should be refreshed. So yeah, our code is working fine. So it would be a nice feature if we could give our feedback to the user that the student was deleted successfully. So for that, what we'll be doing is we'll be using a package called Vue toast notification. So for that, let me just copy this code and open up our terminal, and I'll just install this package and I'll be right back. So the package has been installed successfully, as you can see. And in order to use this, what I need to do is I need to import that from the package, from the npm module in our app.js. So we have that here, and let's paste that. And we also need, okay, we need to import our default theme. So let's copy and save that as well. And we don't need anything else here, so this is fine. So in order to use this toaster notification, what we can do is let's go to our Visual Studio Code, and when we get the response, then here what I want to do is this dot toast dot success, and here I want to pass a message that says student deleted successfully. So let's check whether this is fine. Okay, this looks good. Let's save that. And now if we go ahead and reload our browser, and when I delete a single record, we are getting an error that unknown type error cannot read property success of undefined. What's the error here? Okay, I forgot to specify one more thing, that is vue.use vue toast, which will be in our app.js. So here we need to define this. And one more thing, that is I want to specify here, I want to specify a position here. So for that, let's go ahead and pass in an object. The position that I want to place is on the top right. Save that. And now one last time, if we go ahead and reload our browser, and when I click on delete, then we get a toaster notification that the student was deleted successfully. Okay, this looks good. So our single file deleting feature is working fine. Single record deleting feature is working. And our next step is I want to implement this selecting multiple checkboxes from our data tables. So let's go ahead in our student index.view and define a new property. So on that property, I want to store all the IDs of the students, all the IDs of the checked students. For that, let's define an array, or maybe we could also define an object, but array will also work fine. So we have an array, checked array. So we'll be storing all the IDs of the students that are checked. And let's wire model this with our input type of checkbox. So here the value will be student.id, and let's remodel this with our checked property. And notice one more thing, that Vue.js is so awesome that whenever we remodel any input type of checkbox with an array, then whatever we check through in the loop. So let me just show you what it will actually do here. So let me open the Vue DevTools and open up student index. So I have a checked array which is empty currently. So now if I go ahead and check this array, okay, this is a problem because it should be, we should bind it. So we should specify that colon. So now if I go ahead and reload again and open up the DevTools, we have a checked with an array, empty array. If I go ahead and click on this item, then you can see that we have an array which is with the ID of 5. If I click again, then the array increases. So it automatically performs the updating of the array whenever we select these checkboxes. So our vModel property is working absolutely fine. And now what I want to do is whenever I select on any of the checkbox, then I want to show this button with these options. So for that, let's go ahead on the checked with checked button here, and I want to show this. So we'll be using if the length of the checked array is greater than 0. So save that. And now since our checked array is empty, then we won't see the checkbox. And if I select on any of the item, then the checkbox is visible. And see, as you can see, since we are using JavaScript, so there's no any request to the server, which generally happens in the Livewire. So Vue is much faster and efficient in terms of these kinds of operations in comparison to Livewire. So now here what I want to do is I want to show the count of the checked items. So that will be checked dot length, and whenever I select these items, then the count of that, then the counter also increases. So that's kind of cool. And now what I want to do is I want to delete the items that are checked. So for that, when I click on delete, then I want to execute a function. So whenever I click on this link, then I want to execute a function called delete records. And since this is an A tag, what I also want to do is I want to prevent the default behavior of the href tag. So this will execute the delete records method, and let's go ahead and define that function. So in our methods, I want to define another function called delete records. So here I want to make an API request. So that will be Axios dot delete. I want to make an API request to /API /students /pass destroy, since we are deleting multiple records. And here I want to pass the IDs of the students, so I can actually pass the array, and then we get a response. So if the response dot status is equal to 204, then what I want to do is I want to show a message. So let's show a toaster notification dot success that selected students were deleted successfully. And we also need to execute the this get students method here as well. So let's save that, and let's go ahead and define the API /student/mass destroy API. So in our API.php, we can actually copy this. So API students mass destroy, and we get an array of students, so which I want to go to mass destroy function. Let's save that and go to the student controller and define that function, and we get an array of students. So here what I want to do is I'll just write a log about the received students. We can actually return it, but okay, it's fine. What I'll do is I'll just go to the storage, the logs, and laravel.log. Let me just clear everything from here, save that. And okay, since we are only logging these students, So I'm doing this thing because whenever we send an array from our parameters, then what it will do is it will convert it won't actually send the array, but it will send the values as strings. So let me just show you what I'm actually trying to say. So whenever I select multiple items, let me just select 3 items, and when I click on delete, then if you go ahead now into our laravel.log, then you can see we are only getting 567 as value of string type. So this is not an array, so we get a string type value. So we need to convert this to an array type and then delete the students which has these IDs from our database. So for that, what we need to do is we need to convert. So we have a function. So we have a function called explode that takes the separator as the first argument and the students, the string, as the second argument. And we want to store that in a variable called students array. And the way we delete these records is by calling student where key is this array, and this is actually where condition. So this will search through the students table where the key matches with this students array. So the IDs that exist on this student array will be fetched, and then we want to delete those records. So now those students are deleted, and let's send an HTTP response of no content. So now everything should be working fine. So in our api.php, what we are doing is we are actually executing we are defining a new API for students mass destroy, and we get the students as a parameter which goes to student controller and mass destroy. So here what we are doing is we get the student array as a string of comma separated values. Then we are converting that to an array, and then we are querying the students model where the key matches with this students array, and then delete those records, and then we are returning a response of no content. So no content means we are sending a status of 204. And then in our students.index view, what we are doing is we are making an API request to API student mass destroy and passing the checked array, and then we get the response. So if the response.status is equal to 204, then we show a toaster notification that selected students were deleted successfully, and then we are fetching the students again. So if the status is not 204, or if there's something, another message, like if we get a response of 500, then we can show another message saying that something went wrong, and we can actually show the error message. So for now everything should work fine, as I've already tested this. So let's go ahead and test it again. So we have 3 records. So the first one is enabled, so keep that in mind, so take care of that. So if I go ahead and delete this, then we see that these students were deleted successfully. So we are still seeing the with checked value here, with checked button here. So for that, what we need to do is whenever we get a success message, success response, then what I want to do is I want to reassign that checked array to an empty array. So now everything should work fine. So if I go ahead and select 2 records and delete, then those records are deleted from the database. We have we reassign the checked array to an empty array, and everything works absolutely fine. So now the next thing that I want to do here is when I select, so when I check this array, this checkbox, then I want to select all of the records from this table. So for that, what we need to do is, let's go ahead in our, so we have that in our input type of checkbox. So this is the one that we need to work on. So let's remodel model this with a new property called select page. So when the checkbox is checked, then that value will be set to true, and if it is not checked, then that value will be set to false. So let's go ahead and define the select page property. So this will be false by default, and if you go ahead and check that in our browser, so we have select page as false, and if I select this, then this value changes to true, as you can see here. So now when the select page value changes, so in order to track that, we need to define a watcher. So let's define a watcher for the select page. So whenever this value changes, then what I want to do is, so if this value is true, then what I want to do is I want to loop through the students. So this dot students dot data dot for each, maybe this is the actual syntax for each. Then the for each student, what I want to do is I want to push the student ID to our checked array. So here, in order to push the checked student ID to our checked array, we have the push function. So here I want to push the student ID to our checked array. So we are looping through the data, and then we are pushing the array checked. We are pushing the student ID to the checked array. So let's go ahead and test this out. So now if I select this, as you can see, all the records from this page are selected, and when I uncheck this, then I want to uncheck all of the records. So for that, we have else condition. So when this value is false, then we'll be executing the else condition. In that case, I want to empty that array. So this dot checked will be an empty array. So now let's go ahead and save that and reload our browser again. Now if I select this, then all the records are selected, and if I again select this, then that value will be, so this value will be set to false, and will have an empty array. Will have an empty checked array. So yeah, everything is working perfectly fine. So our next step is what we're gonna do here. The next step will be, okay, one last final thing that I want to do here is, when I select this item, then I want to show a menu that you are currently selecting this much of items, and you want to select all. And when I click on select all, then I want to select all of the items. So for now, as you can see, we are not selecting all the items. We are only selecting 10 items. So I'll be implementing that feature. So let's start working on it. So in order to show a message that we are currently selecting this number of items, let's go ahead in our Visual Studio Code, and let me show where the code is, where that part is. So here we have this div. So I want to wrap that inside another div, and okay, maybe we don't need to wrap this. So I want to show this div if and only if the select page property is true. So let's go ahead and reload. And when I select these items, then I don't see that message. But when I select this checkbox, then I can see, then as you can see, we are seeing this, you are currently selecting all 10 items. And here I want to show the count of the items that are being selected. So for that, we could use the length of the checked array. So this, okay, we don't need this checked dot length. Let's save that. Okay, this is not checkbox, this is checked dot length, and let's load once again. And as you can see, we are seeing you are currently selecting all 10 items. Then also want to implement this feature. So if we click on, you are currently selecting 10 items, all 10 items. Okay, we have selected 10 items. Do you want to select all? So when I click on this button, then I want to show this message And when I click on the select all, then I want to show this message. Okay, so for that it got a bit of mismatch maybe. Okay, we also need to define one more property, that is select all. So when I click on select all, then I want to make the select all value to true. So if the select all property is set to true, then I want to show that you are currently selecting all. Then okay, I want to show all the values of I want to show the count of all the items. So for that I'll just implement that later, but here it will be v else. So if the select all is empty, or if the select all is set to false, then I want to show this v else condition, and I want to show all of these only if the select page is set to true. So for that, let's wrap that inside a div. And okay, we don't need that since we have a div in here. So I can actually use that if select page. So if select page is set to true, then we'll be executing this function. And if the select all is set to false, then we'll be showing this message. And if the select all is set to true, then we'll be showing this message. So now let's go ahead and test it out. So if I select these items, so if I select the checkbox, then you can see that you have selected all 10 items. You want to select all 25. And when I click on the select all, so we have that, where's that? Okay, we have selected 10 items. You want to select all. Okay, we have that here. So what I want to do here is at click dot prevent, I want to execute a function called select all records. So we can define a function for select all since we already have a property named select all. So let's save that and define that function. Let's define that here, select all records. And here what I want to do is I'll just change the value of select all to true. So what it will do is it will change the value of select all to true, and the message that will be showing here will change. So now only thing that we need to do is we need to show the count of the items and also select all of the items in our data table. So for that, so the next step that I want to do here is I want to show a total of the students item here. So you are currently selecting, so this is fine. This will display the length of the current page, so total records of the current page. But what if we want to get all the records, all the count of the records that we actually have on the database? So for that, what I'm going to show here is I'll be showing the students index, and in here, as you can see, we have the students property, and in that we have meta data. So in here, as you can see, we have quite a few properties here. So current page, from, last page, links, page, per page, to, and we have a value, we have a property called total. So we can actually use this total variable on the total in order to display the total records. So you have selected in here, what I want to do is I want to display the checked dot length instead of 10. And do you want to select all? So instead of 25, what I want to do is I want to define the students dot meta dot total. We go ahead and check that. So students dot meta dot total. Okay, so let's save that, and when we click, then I want to select all the records, and okay, this should work fine. So we are only updating the total count. So if I go ahead and select that, you have selected 10 items. Do you want to select all? 41. So the only thing left to implement here is when I click on select all, then I want to select all of these records that have been displayed, so all the paginated values also. So now the next step that I want to do here is I want to define a new API. So let's go ahead and define a new API saying students all, which will go to student controller, and let's define a new function called all students. So basically what this API will do is it will return only the IDs of the students. So we'll be returning only the IDs of all the students and then assign those IDs to the checked array. So I hope you get the idea. So in here, what I'll be doing is I'll define a new function called all students, and then here I'll just return student, and I want to plug the ID. This should work fine. So now if we go ahead in our students index.view, so when I click on select all records, then what I'll be doing is I'll be making an API request. So where's that? Select all records. We set the select all to true. And instead of first making the select all to true, let's make an API request axios.get to /API/students/all, and then we get a response. So let's type dump the response dot data. So let's go ahead and test that in our browser. So when I click on select all, then okay, we need to select all, and as you can see, we are getting all the IDs of the students, then students that are available in our database. Now what we want to do here is we want to assign these values to our checked array. The response.data will be this dot checked equals response.data, and then I want to set the select all to true. So let's save that and see whether this works or not. According to our assumptions, this should work. So if I select this, then the 10 records are selected. And if I click on select all, then we can see we are currently selecting all 41 items, and we have the checked array of 41. And if I click on page 2, then the state is maintained all over our pages. So this is really cool. So now what we can do is, so we have seen this, we have already implemented the selecting all 10 20 41 items. So if I click on it, so the checked array gets empty. So I want to show a small bug here. So as you can see, when I click on this, then you are currently selecting all 10 items. So here what I want to do is, when I uncheck that, so that is in the watch page of select page maybe. So here what I want to do is I want to reassign the checked array to an empty array, and then I want to set the select all to false. Save that, and now I select this. I select the 10 items and click on select all these 41 items are selected, and I uncheck it. And again, if I check it, then you have selected 10 items, you want to select all. So this is working fine. And I want to show one more bug. So if I'm selecting 3 records, and then when I go ahead and select the checkbox to select all the records, then as you can see, it should select actually 10 items, but we are currently selecting 13 items. So the IDs that we selected earlier got repeated again. So in order to prevent this, what we can do is, let's go ahead to our select page, and if so, here what I want to do is I want to reassign the checked array to an empty array, and this should work fine. So let's go ahead and reload our browser, and when I select these 3 items and select this checkbox, then you have selected 10 items, you're going to select all. So this is working fine. And one more thing, one last thing that I want to do in this video is, so since I'm selecting 41 items here, and while I'm selecting these items, what if I go ahead and delete this item from our record? So let's check out the bug. So if I click on this, then the item got deleted from our database, but we have the checked array of 41. So what I want to do is I want to remove that ID from our checked array. So in order to do that, let's go to our Visual Studio Code. While we are deleting the single record, then what I want to do here is, if the record gets deleted, then what I want to do here is I want to assign the checked array to this dot checked dot filter. So I want to filter all of the IDs in our array, and I want to only keep the items where the ID is not equal to the student ID. So this should work. So what we are basically doing here is we are filtering through all of the items from our checked array and only keeping the IDs where the ID is not equal to this student ID. So the final result that we'll be getting here is we'll be removing the student ID that we deleted from our database. So now let's go ahead and save that, reload our browser. Let's select these 10 items and click on delete. So as you can see, you have already, maybe you have noticed this. So you have selected 10 items, earlier we have 9, and the total also got reduced by 1. So this is working fine. And maybe a few things that we need to implement this. So this video is getting quite lengthier, but I don't want to implement that on the other video. I would just want to implement it here. So that is the confirmation message. So when I click on this, delete this, or when I click on this delete, then I want to show a confirmation message, that is, are you sure you want to delete this? And then when I click on OK, then only I want to delete that record. So for that, let's go to our Visual Studio Code. So in our Visual Studio Code, when I click on delete single record, here what I want to do is, on click, I want to confirm, are you record? And along with this, I also want to specify another parameter, that is event dot stop immediate propagation. So this is basically a JavaScript function. So if when I click on this confirm button and when I click on OK, then this function will be executed and it will stop the propagation execution of code after this line of code. So anything after this, so @click won't be executed. And if I click on OK, when I click on OK, then this function will be executed, and when I click on cancel, then anything after this code won't be executed. So event.stop immediate propagation is gonna do that. So let me just copy this part, so from here to here, and paste that in our delete button as well. So here, let's just specify that here. So let's save that. And now if I go ahead and click on this, then I can see, are you sure you want to delete this record? When I click on cancel, nothing's gonna happen. And when I click on OK, then that record gets deleted from our database. So this was quite a lengthy video. You like the content, and in the next part, we'll be implementing the sort functionality. We do have some other features to be implemented. So stay tuned for the next part, and I hope you like the content. So if you like the content, do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.